So this is a special recording for my Perry McClure students. We did this activity in class the other day, and I had to wander around the class and answer questions. So I'm just going to do one here that won't have all that extra talking in it. So this won't be an hour and 15 minutes long, but I'll just ask that you stop every once in a while to make sure everybody is on the same page as far as performing the operations that you need to do. So we're going to learn how to use Google spreadsheets. And I sent some data to you the other day. So the way you will access the data is to first log into your Blackboard, but not actually all the way into Blackboard. I want you to go to your mail. So you'll click on Google Mail, and you'll see this email from me. So you click on that, and you'll see that there's an attachment. And you can download that attachment. So unless you tell it otherwise, it's going to download it into your downloads directory. I'm not sure how it works on, so we're going to save the file instead of opening the file because we want to open it in Google Spreadsheets. So I'm going to say OK, and it's downloaded it somewhere. You can find it up here. So that actually opened it up again. Anyway, hopefully you'll be able to find it on your Google Drive. Okay, so let's go back to, well, actually we can go from right here. So we're going to go up to this little waffle thing in the right hand corner, and we're going to choose Sheets. And you may have used Sheets before. This is just the statistics part of it. So we're going to create a new spreadsheet. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import that data that we just saved somewhere. So we go to File, Import, and we need to upload it. So what this is these are the files that are in your Google account online. So we have to upload the data that I sent to you, which you've put on your laptop. So you upload, and I'm going to select the file from the computer. And this is my downloads directory. And typically if I do by date, you can order things by clicking at the top of the column. So right now it's the old stuff first. I want the new stuff first, so I have to click it again. And I go down and I find it here. And that's one from today. That was the one I did yesterday. So you just have to double click it or click it and then say open. So you end up with this menu. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace the current sheet because there's nothing in it right now. So it'll just put it in there. We're going to let it automatically detect how the numbers are separated. And we don't have any, it says convert text to numbers and dates. I don't think we have to do that. So we push import. And so this is the data. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the data, it's about 432 data points. And we've got the column headings. So we can't read this that well. So the way you can make the width of the columns larger is to move your cursor up between the columns till you get that double arrow. And then you just double click. Well, actually that didn't. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, we can do the same thing again. And we just don't want it to go off screen. So we could do that. To see the entire column, those are kind of wide, so I'm going to just put them back to where they were, so you can actually just drag them and decrease the column width. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a new sheet inside this spreadsheet. So you see down here it says sheet 1. So if we go to the plus sign, we can add a sheet which would be called sheet 2. And there's nothing in that right now. Click on sheet 1 again. What we're going to do is we're just going to do some of the statistical things that we've already talked about with just one of these sets of data. Now, all I'm going to do is copy the data over. I'm not going to copy the header over. So I'm going to put my cursor here in cell B2. What I did there, I did Control plus. That zooms in on your spreadsheet. Now I could highlight all the data just by dragging this cell down, and you can see how it's blue. But there's actually a little easier way of doing it. So just push escape to get rid of, well, that didn't work. How about just click anywhere, get out of there. Okay. If you drag your cursor all the way down to the bottom, so you're looking at the left-hand column and you're looking, for 432. If I go down here and I don't click anything yet, push the shift key and then click. So what that does, it highlights everything from that first cell down to the last cell. Now in Google Sheets, you have to use shortcut commands to copy and paste. So there's 3 commands. There's Control C, which copies, Control V, which pastes, and Control X, which cuts. So I just want to copy this data so we can look at it on a separate page. So I'm going to use Control C, and you see how the little dashed lines come up. That's to show that this has been selected to do something with. And then I click on Sheet 2 and click in cell A1 and do Control V, and that's paste. So you can see we have all our data points. So what I want to do with that is I want to calculate the mean and the median and some other stuff. So we don't need to do this immediately, but I'm going to do it while we have this highlighted. So you can see all the data is highlighted. So what I'm going to do, use that fact it's already highlighted, and go to Data up here in the menu, Sort Range by Column A from smallest to largest. So what that's going to do is take my data and it's going to range it in numerical order. So my smallest number is 86, and my largest number down here at 431 is 621. We'll use that later for calculating the median. But while we're down here at the bottom, let's go ahead and calculate the mean. We're going to do it using the definition for mean, and then we'll use the built-in function. So we're going to equals. You always need to put an equal sign when you're doing an equation. We're going to add up all the numbers. Now, I could highlight the cells. If I go up here and I highlight cells, you see it automatically starts filling it in. And I'd have to drag all the way up to the top, but the fact that I know the data starts in cell A1, so if I click within this little dialog box and I do the backspace key and just put A1 in there, so it says A1 through A431, and then I click on the end and put a right parenthesis, so it says equals sum A1 colon A431. So what that's going to do is going to add up all the numbers, and I'm going to divide by the total number of data points, which is 431, and you see that's the mean right there that shows up. Another way I could do it is if I did count A1 colon A431, that counts how many entries I have in that range. So I should have gotten the same number, 265.055. Let's just try that. So I'm going to go back and put 431, 2. Huh, well, that's interesting. So why is that? Count A1 colon A431. Oh, forgot the A431. 265. Oh yeah, that is the same number. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure why I was. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. So that is the mean, and I'm going to type in the word mean so we know what that is. I'm also going to show you the command. So the command for mean is average. That's another word, average. Then you put the left parenthesis A1 colon A431, and I should get exactly the same number. So that's what the built-in function is doing. It's just calculating. So you specify the data range. And you can't just go to say, oh, I always put an A1 through A431. It depends on how many columns or how many rows of data I have in a column. Okay, so that's the mean. Either just calculating it from the definition or using the built-in function. Okay, next I'm going to do the median. So we're going to scroll all the way to the top. And in column B, I'm going to put 1, 2. Now, I could use these numbers over here, which works out fine because I start in the first row. But if I had this data in something other than the first row, I found it helpful to just list which number it is. This is the first number, the second number, third number, fourth number, etc. Now I have 431 numbers. I don't want to have to type all that in. So what you do is you go to the first cell, drag it down, so it highlights the two cells with this little box in the corner. And what it does is it says, oh, you're wanting to continue this same sequence, which is just adding 1 to the next number. So I go and I grab the corner and then I drag it down. In this case, I am going to drag it all the way down. So you just pull it off the screen. Keep an eye on the numbers on the left-hand side. And when you get close to 400, slow down. So that means moving closer to the spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm moving closer to the spreadsheet. Then I went too far, so we go the other way. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's one reason you don't want to overdo it. So I'm talking and doing something at the same time. So it's 400. So 350, I'll slow it down. There we go. Okay. To make sure I don't do it again. Okay. So you get 431. So those are the numbers. Now let's open up my smart notebook just to do a calculation on the side here. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out which number in the list is the one that we should use. So there's two options. There's even number of data points and there's an odd number of data points. So I have 431 data points. That's odd. So the rule is you divide by 2, which is 100 and 200, sorry, 215.5. So what I do is I round that up to the next integer, 216. So that's the number in the list, the 216th number. So what I'll do is I'll just scroll up, go to the 216th number, and that's the 216th number is 229. So that is my median. Now, not surprisingly, there's a built-in function that does that as well. So we're going to do the same thing that we did in the previous one. We're going to use that function. It's equals median. And again, we're going to specify the range of data that we're looking at. And that's A1 colon A431. Now, to do the median, in this case, we've ordered them numerically. But to do the median, we don't have to have it ordered. It'll figure out the median just by looking at the data. So we just, I mean, it doesn't take that much effort to sort it. But let's say you had data like in the previous sheet that had things that were not in, they were in date order, but not numerical order. And actually, I think we'll go back and do that just to show you. So we push enter, should get 229, so the same answer. Now, if there were an even number of data points, then say it was 430 data points, you would divide by 2, which would be 215, and you would take the 215th and the 216th value, and you would average those numbers together. So that's what happens there. So let's just go back to sheet 1, and we're going to go all the way to the bottom. Oh, we're already there. Okay, so we're at the bottom of the data. And if I put it in equals average, and we're from A2, because that's where the data starts, to A431, and I push enter, and for some reason it thinks it's a date. So let's change that. So if you go to format, number, push pick number, see what it does. It's still thinking it's date. Okay, I didn't expect that, but we'll fix it. So we're going to change this back. The problem is it already thinks it's a date. It thought what happened here was it saw this was a date, and so it assumed these other ones were dates, which is not. They're not. So let me just show you here. I'm going to copy this data again to another spreadsheet because it apparently changes. Okay, so we click the top cell, we go down to the bottom, we push shift, click that, use Control C, copy it, go to sheet 2, and I'm just going to put the data off to the right here. So it's the same data that's in column 1, but it's not sorted. We do Control V. Okay. And then if we go down to the bottom of this data, and I calculate the mean, equals average A1, I mean not A, but it's column D, D1, colon D431. You see you get the same number. You know, obviously this doesn't matter, but if I go up to where the median was earlier, which was halfway, 200, there we go. So if I do median here, and I go D1 colon D431, right parenthesis, you'll see I'll get 229. So here they're ordered, here they're not ordered, and I still get the same median. It all works out. Okay, so that's the median. We could also do the mode. Let's just, the mode of D1 colon D431, and it says it's 364, so that means that 364 was listed more than once. If we go to our data on the left, when we go down to 364, we should be able to count. You see there's quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there are 13 entries that were 264. Okay. So we're going back, we're just scrolling up to the top. I'm going to go ahead and delete the data in these 2 rows. So the way you delete the data is you highlight both columns. So let me show you. You go up here, click on this one, then just drag to the right. That'll highlight, you know, as many columns as you want. So if I wanted to do 3 columns, 4 columns, I could do that. I'm just doing 2. And then if you right click, it gives you these choices. And what I wanted to do is to delete the columns E and D and E. So I've deleted the data. The columns are still there, but the data's been deleted. Okay, now, so we've done mean, median, mode. We're going to do the histogram next. So this is something that everybody's going to have to do to get it in a situation where histograms are going to be easy to generate. So you go to add-ons, get add-ons, and then you search for histogram, because that's what we're trying to do. And you'll see there's about 4 choices. I'm kind of curious. I have to download that one to see what it is. But what you're going to do is you're going to choose this one, Excel Miner Analysis Tool Pack. This does pretty much all the things that the data analysis package in Excel will do. And you'll pick, it'll say free, and you just click on it. Mine says manage because I already have it. Okay, so once you pick free, it should be installed, and you go then to add-ons. But we're not ready quite yet. Okay, so to make a histogram, we have our data. We need to figure out what the classes or bins are, how we're going to separate the data up. So if you remember the other day, we said that we wanted to have 5 to 12 classes. So the way we'll do this is we'll look at the minimum value, which is 86, and we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. 621, 86, 621, 86, 621. Okay, so that's the range of the values. And so I'm going to get my calculator out somewhere. Oh, there it is. So 621 minus 86 equals 535. So if we were to take that 536 divided by 5, we would have 107. And if we take 536 divided by 12, we get 45. So what we want to do is we want to pick the width of the class somewhere between 107 and 45. So 100 could be a choice. We could do 75 maybe. We could do 50. So these are the width of classes that will give us some between 5 and 12 classes. Well, 50 looks like a good choice to me. It's going to give me more classes. The ones down here, the smaller this number is, the more classes there are. And 100 would only give me 5 classes, 5 or 6 classes. And I have a lot of data. I have 431 data points, so that should be okay. So the classes we're going to have, think about, so we have 86. So it makes sense to do from 50 to, and I'm going to do these as inequalities just to show you exactly what it is. So we're going to be greater than 50, less than or equal to 100. Greater than 100, less than or equal to 150. 150, greater than 150, less than or equal to 200. Etc. Our top number is 621, so we're going to want to go to 600 to 650. So notice I have the equality on this side, the inequality. That way there's no overlap. If I drew this on a number line and I had the first bit, this would be 50, this would be 100, this would be 150. I'm not including 50. I'm moving everything to 100, but not and including 100. Then my next one is I'm not including 100 and then going to 150 and then including 150. So there's no overlap in that situation. So the way that I do that on my spreadsheet is I go to the top of this data, and I'm going to put my classes in this column. So I'm going to start at 50, go to 100, and I could just put 150 or 200. But if I highlight these two cells and I grab the corner and I pull it down, you see that I've done that automatically. Now what this really represents is this is less than 50. So really, do I want to actually, let me get rid of that. I don't need that. So what this is going to do is going to be anything less than 100 down to 0, but because of the fact that my smallest number is 86, it's effectively to 50. So even though it may not appear that this has give me a class width of 50, it does. So this will be the one that designates from 150 down to 100, but not including 100. This one will say from 200 down to 150, but not including that. So these are my class things that separate the classes, not the actual classes, but the numbers that separate it. And that's all I need. So we go to add-ons, pick Excel Miners Analysis Tool Pack, push Start, and it gives you all these different analysis tools. So we scroll on down, look for histogram. So we need to put our input range in. Now you can do it manually. It's going to, I'm just going to click up there. If I click up here and then put my cursor in here, it's going to choose where the cursor is. I'm going to actually type it in, so you just backspace A1 colon A431. So that's where my data is. My bin range goes down to D13, so it's D2 through D13. I'm going to put my output over here. So in this case, I'm clicking at this cell, and then I click in the box E1, and I'm going to pick chart output. That's it. Input data. I'm going to break the data up. Where I'm going to put the results numerically are frequency distribution, and then I'm going to do the histogram, the output. So I say OK, and it has done it. So I'll show you. Just close. Oh, there, it finally came. So it's done the calculation. I'm going to close this dialog box, and there's my frequency distribution. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight that and push delete because I don't really want to show more. So these are the number of data points out of 431. This is the number that are greater than 50, or greater than 50 but less than or equal to 100. This is going to be greater than 100 but less than or equal to 150. And then I get the rest of the information. Now if I scroll over to the right, you'll see I have a histogram already made. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it to a different sheet because it's easier to see. So I'm going to click in the box so it highlights this whole thing. I go to the upper right hand corner and say move to own sheet. And so now there's a new sheet called chart 1, and this is my histogram. So let's see, we have labels. This says bin. In reality, it's oil production. So we'll put something in there, thousands of barrels or something like that. This is going to be, frequency is the correct. You could put number of months, that's what it is, that have those. Now, the x-axis just uses a single number. what I'm going to do is go back to sheet 2, which has the data, and then I'm going to scroll to the left so I can see it. I'm going to do something slightly different here. I'm going to be more explicit about this so that it's exactly what we just said a minute ago. Let's see what it looks like. So you could do greater than 50. Actually, we can't do. I'm just going to do 50 to 100. And then the next one will be 100 to 150. Next will be 150 to 200. So what I'm doing is I'm double-clicking the cell so that I'm editing it. I'm getting rid of that little quotation mark, and I'm just being more explicit about what those labels represent. So however you want to get around these cells. You can also use F2 to put it in edit mode. That's what I'm doing right now. So I'm pushing enter to go to the next cell, pushing F2 to edit it. I'm using my cursor to move my arrow keys to move my cursor over, pushing backspace to delete that little doohickey thing, and then put 400 dash. Okay, F2, backspace, 450, enter, F2, 500, F2, 550 dash, edit, backspace, 600 dash. Okay, so now I've got these better descriptors. And I think actually if I went up here and I changed this from bin to oil production in 1,000 barrels. I forget what anyway, I don't know if it's per day or a month. So I think go to the chart, it will have updated that. Didn't do that. Okay, so that doesn't automatically make that the title. So now you can see I've got these ranges. I'm going to change the title. I'm going to change the font a little bit. I'm going to get rid of the legend. I'm going to put these at an angle so we can see them more easily. So to edit the chart, you just go to Advanced Edit. And you can see the graph over here. And the changes we make are going to be automatically updated. So I've zoomed out so I can make these changes. So if I want to change the title, I'd say oil production from 1981 to something. I forget what it was, 216. I can change the size of the label. Let me push enter first. So there you go. There's the title. I can change the font and all the other pretty things. So that's actually was the font for the legend, which I don't really need. So let's get rid of the legend. So legend, you can do the position or you can just not have one. For the title, the font, let's make it a little bigger. Okay. Now we're going to scroll down. Then you can deal with the axes. So the horizontal axis, the title is going to be oil production in 1,000 barrels per month, I guess. Push enter. There's my title. It's kind of small, so let's make it a little bigger. Make it to 14 font. Oh, that's the actual numbers. Oh, here's the title. I keep going the wrong direction. Okay. You can take the italics off if you want. You can make it bold. All kinds of stuff like that. They have actually slanted the titles. It's auto. If it didn't do it automatically, I might, do it manually. And the What else can I do? I could do the vertical axis, and I could, instead of doing frequency, I could do, I could say number of months. Push enter. There it is. So let's make it the same. It's bold. Make it the same font as the other. And I'm going to change the numbers. Axis labels. Change that to 14. So that looks pretty good. Then you update it. And then you're back to your chart. And so I've made changes that, the slant helps because you can see you get all the information on one line instead of having it staggered. Got my nice title, axis titles, axis sizes, all kinds of good stuff. So that's how you do a histogram. Okay, let's go back to sheet 2. I'm going to do a separate one. We're going to do the standard deviation calculation. So I'm going to take the data again. So click on the first cell, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the data, push shift to highlight the whole thing, shift click, do control C, which is copy. I'm going to add a new sheet 3, and then I'm going to do, I'm going to click in cell A2 and then do control V. So let me zoom in a little bit again so you can see it better. Okay, let me get out of the cell. Won't let me do that. Control plus. That's just making the screen bigger. Okay, back to cell A1. This is my data column. This is my deviation column. This is my squared deviation column. So if we go back to Smartboard, the equation for the standard deviation, S, is equal to the square root of the sum of the deviations squared divided by the number of data points minus 1, where x bar is the average or mean. So this number doesn't change. This number changes for each data point and is always the same, and in our case is equal to 431. So what we're going to... Okay, so your attendance question, it relates to spreadsheets. So, right nowadays you have Excel and you have Google Sheets. Those are the two that you've probably been exposed to at all. But there was a time when there was those were not the standard spreadsheets. And so what I want you to do is I want you to go to Wikipedia and look up Quattro Pro. And in the first few sentences, it'll talk about another kind of spreadsheet that was the first to use the format that we are used to nowadays. It starts with an L and involves numbers as well. And so when I started work, actually first I used Quattro Pro. There was this other program, and they were pretty much equally in use. I guess you can still get Quattro Pro according to the Wikipedia article, but most people use Excel these days. What we're going to do is we have X. That's in the first column. We need to calculate X mean. Then we'll calculate the difference between X and the mean. Then we'll square it, and then we'll add them all up. So that's the concept here. So I need the standard deviation. Let's just put that over here. So I'm not the standard deviation, but the mean. So I'm going to say the mean equals, and I'm going to push tab, and I'm going to say equals average, and it's going to be cell A2 through A4032. So A2 you can see right over here, and it goes down to 432 because I left one space blank here. And I should get, what was it? I've forgotten already what it was. 265.05. So that's the mean. So if we go to the deviation, we say equals, this is x. So I click in A2 and I subtract the mean, which is an F1. And then I push F4 at the top. Now if it doesn't work when you do this, you can manually enter this. So if F4 works, then that pops up. If F4 doesn't work, you just push $F $1. So that, I didn't like that. A2 F1. Let's go down to the bottom. Make sure I didn't. Yeah, well, it looks right. It did calculate earlier. Circular dependency detected. Let me just undo here. What's going on? Okay, so that's the average of those two. So if I do A2 minus that, put the $, push enter, still getting that. What is the circular dependency? Usually that means that you're using something somewhere that you shouldn't be using it. So let me click on my thing again. A2 minus F1. So I don't really see why it's doing that. It didn't happen the other day. Oh, it's average. Is that what it did over here? Or just subtracted it? Oh, I saw what I did wrong. A432. Okay, that was the problem. So when I entered this, I didn't put A432, I just put 432. Okay, so that's the deviation. If you take this number and you subtract that number, you'll get negative 179. So the deviation squared is all you do is you take the deviation, B2, and you square it. So you do a little hat with a square. Push that. So it's going to be a large number, and it's also positive. Now what we do is we're going to copy both of these cells. So we click on B2 and we drag it, let go. You'll see the little square, and we're going to drag that all the way down to the bottom. So again, keep an eye out on the left hand column and look for around 350, and then we'll bring up our cursor closer to the interior. And that way we can do this last part more slowly so we don't overshoot it. Okay, then bring that back up. So these are the deviations. This number is that minus the mean. You can see these are different by 3 because those are different by 3. And then this number squared is that number. So go back to this. So what we've done so far is this. We've done this part. We've taken the deviation, we've squared them. Now we need to add them together. So the adding function is just sum. And we're adding column C, so it's C2 colon C432, 32. And so those are the sums of the deviations. Sums of deviations squared. So go back to the formula. All we need to do is take that number, divide by n minus 1, take the square root of it. So to do that, you say equals sqrt, which is the square root function, left parenthesis, click in cell C434, do the slash, left parenthesis, 431, minus 1, 2 right parentheses. push enter. That is the standard deviation. Now, of course, there's a built-in function that does all that, and we don't have to, we don't do any calculations. We just say stdev left parenthesis a2 colon a432 right parenthesis. So we're saying find the standard deviation of the numbers in that selection, and we get the same number. So this one was done doing the whole real calculation, and the second one was just using the function that's available. Okay, not sure what happened there. So let me go back in again. Sign me out. So, okay, we're back in again. So we'll go to sheet 3. Luckily everything's saved. So again, if we go down to the bottom, so how many times will you ever have to do what I just did, unless you take statistics again? Not many times beyond that, except for your project. You'll just use the built-in function, but it gives you an idea of what the process is. So that little function, standard deviation, does exactly what I did here, but does it in the background. Okay. Got 2 more things to do. We're going to add another spreadsheet. I'm going to take the data. So we're going to click on cell A432. We're going to scroll all the way up to the top, push Shift, then click on cell A2. So that's highlighting the data from the other direction. We're going to do Control C, go to sheet 4. I'm going to click in cell A2 again, Control V. So there's my data. Now, I'm just going to, from our previous page, let's just write down what the values are. So, let me get my cursor. Okay, so looking at the previous page where we had standard deviation and mean. So the mean's 265,055. 265,055. Standard deviation. $120, $120,262. Okay, so let's then move those to the spreadsheet for sheet 4. So the mean is equal to 265,055. 265.055. Okay, standard deviation equals 120.262. 120.262. Okay, so those are the mean and standard deviations. Now, actually, I don't think we need the mean for this. This is called a z-score, which we haven't talked about in class yet. So you might want to come back to this video after we've discussed it. So just find out what page it is on and come back to it. So the z-score is just equal to the data value. Actually, we do need the mean for this, so let's go. Need a left parenthesis equals left parenthesis. We're going to take the data value, subtract the mean. We're going to push F4 to get those dollar signs in there, divided by the standard deviation. Oh, didn't like that. Let's go in here and edit. So if we do slash $E$2, so that's this cell right here. That's the standard deviation. And you can see the z-score is negative 1.48887. So what the z-score is it's telling us how many standard deviations below or above the mean the actual data value is. So this is 1.48 standard deviations lower than the mean value. And I'm going to copy that formula all the way down. So here we've got 2.95. And so you can see the z-scores start negative, and then because I've got these ranked numerically, you start with the most negative and end up with the most positive. And these are measures of how close the values are to the mean in terms of standard deviations. So that's the z-score. One other thing relating to this previous one, if I add all the deviations up in this column, I should get 0. So if you go B2 through B432, you get not exactly 0, but essentially 0. The sum of the deviations equals 0, whereas the sum of the squares of the deviations is a big number. So if you add all the z-scores together, I'm not sure if you get 0 or not. Let's go down to the bottom, see what happens. So I'm just using my cursor. Okay, so let's see, sum, and it would be B2 through B432, and yeah, it's pretty close to 0, but not exactly 0. Okay. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to paste this data in the new spreadsheet. And I think it's already saved, so I'm going to try Control V. Yeah, so it was already in my clipboard. So the last thing is to do the descriptive statistics. So I go to Add-ons, Excel Minor Tool Pack, Start. I go down and I look for descriptive statistics. So all you have to do is you have to put the input. So I'm going to manually input A1, back up here, A1 colon A431. Actually, since it was highlighted, it put it exactly there. So I'm going to push enter. Actually, we go to the next one. Output range, I'm going to put it right here. Summary statistics, I'm going to take these things off because we don't talk about those. We just want the summary statistics. That's it. Say OK. And there it is. So this basically does all the calculations that we've done earlier. Excuse me for a second. So we have the mean, we have the median, the mode, the standard deviation. The variance is the standard deviation squared. The range was the high value minus the low value. We use that to figure out how to do the histogram. If you add all the numbers together, you get that. It's not very useful. There are 431 data points. So there's a few things here. Kurtosis, skewness. These have to do with how close to a normal distribution they are. and if the data is skewed to one side. This is telling me it's skewed a little bit towards the higher side. If we go back to our graph here, you'll see, we get this extra stuff over here. So it's skewed a little bit that way. And the normal distribution looks at how the data fits to a normal, and it's not quite normal. So that saves a lot of time. We just highlight the data, choose descriptive statistics, gives pretty much everything we need. Okay, now the last thing I want to do for you to do is to send this to me, so I know that you've actually completed this in class. What you'll do is you go, let me zoom out a little bit so I can get all the menus visible. You go to File. Actually, we have to still zoom out a little bit more. So you have emails and attachment. And I just realized one thing I forgot to tell you. You can change the title of the spreadsheet. So I want you to put in here, in class exercise, and put your name, not my name. I know what my name is. Well, I thought I did. Okay, so that's the name of the file now. Okay, so go to File, Emails and Attachment, pick Excel, put my email address in, which is snicholson@dslcc.edu. It'll say in-class exercise, your name. You don't need to put a message, and you could send a copy to yourself if you wanted to see it, and then you push send. And what will happen is if I go to my email, I'll have this whole spreadsheet, which I'll be able to look at. You don't send it as email collaborators, because then you have to give me permission to collaborate with you, which is a pain in the butt. And also don't do PDF, because I can't edit it if I want to edit it and send you some results. So your in-class project, your chapter project will basically be what we just did now. So there'll be another video associated with that, but it pretty much will show you what we're doing today. So you'll get a practice of doing it multiple times. So I think that's all I have to tell you at this point. Oh, I'm going to show you one more, so just hang on here for a second. Another thing that might be useful if you were looking at this data is to do it as a what we call a scatter plot. So we're just going to do that. So we're going to click on cell A1, go to B1, then drag it down until we get all the way to the bottom of the data, 431 data points later. Because histograms and time plots are two of the most useful tools. So you're going to say insert chart, and so that's what it looks like. They recommended we use this kind of chart, which looks actually pretty decent. You could click there, you could get one that has colored in, you could do a histogram. Oh, wow, it actually did more than 12 classes. So I don't remember it having a histogram. Anyway, those are the three defaults. If we go to chart types, you have these choices. Use row 1 as headers, which is fine because that does describe the data. Use column A as labels, which for a bar plot makes sense. For our case, I'm not going to use them as labels. I'm just going to use them as numbers, and we'll see what happens. It shouldn't change anything. The kind of plot I want to do is called a scatter plot, like that. So that shows the individual data points. Now I thought there were other scatter plots with lines connecting them. I don't see that option anymore. I don't know if they've taken that off. So maybe the default wasn't such a bad idea. So I'm going to use column A as headers and do this line chart. It's a little easier to see. And then you can go to the customization, which is basically what we had before when we edited the graph. And then I'm going to get rid of the label because there's only one legend. So I do that, then it's gone. Now, if I were to include the legend, but if I went back and I were to change this to, instead of B, I changed it to D, and then I pushed enter, what you would get is 3 plots. One which would be Pennsylvania, one Oklahoma, one California. And the Pennsylvania is essentially nothing. It's really small. So that would make seeing the Pennsylvania data pretty hard. But it shows the other ones. Notice Oklahoma's drying up here until they develop fracking and other techniques, and it zoomed up. Now, California, though, looks like it hasn't increased. It's probably because California has not allowed fracking. So that's, if you looked at states that allow fracking, if you know, noticed our new EPA chair's former Attorney General of Oklahoma, friend to fracking. So anyway, if I'll change this back to A again, or B, and then it's just going to be Pennsylvania. And I can see that there. Okay. Now I'm going to insert it. And it's going to be inserted into the original spreadsheet here somewhere. So there it is. It's actually covering the data. So I could take this and I could move it somehow or another. There you go. I could move it out of the way, or I could put it on a separate page. So if you do that, I'd go up to this little pull-down menu and go move to own sheet. And there it is. So they must have done some fracking in Pennsylvania too. Not as much as in Oklahoma. And the last thing is you can change the names of these. So if I wanted to rename the title, I could say rename and call it Pennsylvania Penn Chart or something like that. And if I wanted to do chart 1, which was the histogram, I could click there, rename it as histogram. And that way it would be more evident what's going on. Okay, so that's it. And push the stop.